don't be afraid to pivot. What got you to here isn't necessarily what's going to get you to the next step. But congrats, you're here. But now we need to think about potentially pivoting and doing other things if we're talking about what is the next North Star. And some of that can include breadth and depth of services. Maybe some of the things that a founder or the owner of a company said, we'd never do that. We really believe that you need to have things that make sense in your market. What I've learned is there's not really a lot of friends in this business. So I'm very fortunate to work with people that I consider friends and mentors and partners. Because when it comes to money, it's that sad reality of, hey, it's just business. That is just the nature of the beast, especially when it comes to private equity in this space.
Welcome to Builders, the podcast for impact-driven leaders who are done carrying it all and ready to scale with clarity, strategy, and freedom. I'm your host, Alex Snider, strategic growth architect, creator of the CEO Recode, and second brain to leaders who are building brilliant companies without sacrificing every ounce of their time, energy, or sanity. Each episode, I sit down with bold leaders who've rebuilt, recalibrated, or redefined what it means to lead well and live well on their own terms. We talk messy pivots, leadership upgrades, tactical wins, and the deep personal work it takes to build a business that actually works for you. If you love the episode, make sure you follow, rate, and share it with another leader who's building big and wants to build smarter. And if you're listening and thinking, damn, I need someone in the guts of my business with me, let's talk. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth and define 2 to 3 high-impact shifts you can implement now to regain traction and build momentum. Now, let's dive in. Let's build it better. Welcome, Leigh Feldman, to the Builders Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. You are the CEO of Youth Franchise Brands, which is a private equity fund focused on franchise brands, which is in the title. I'm so excited to dig in. And as always, I don't even try to do justice to my incredible guests. So I'm going to ask you to give us, in your own words, who are you and what are you building?
Oh my goodness. Well, first off, thank you for having me. I very much appreciate this opportunity to get to speak with you because you are incredible. And while you're the host of this show, you should also be a guest on it that is featured and interviewed because I know you literally travel the world talking to experts and I know you have a ton to share. But yes, I am Leigh Feldman. I'm the CEO of Youth Franchise Brands, as you said, and we are a private equity, but private equity not in the evil sense, but in the truest sense. It's a group of us that put together money for this fund. And we invest in franchisors that sort of overlap and play in the space of youth, family, and corporate events for, the adults that don't want to go to Top Golf or do axe throwing and actually want to do something fun as a getaway as a group. And we're very excited. We have 2 brands we'll be talking about today, Flower Power Cooking Studios and Young Chefs Academy, who really play in the youth enrichment space and sort of vocational activities for preparing kids to really love to cook and love to be in the kitchen. And so I'm so thankful to be able to talk about the brands and talk to you. And again, thank you for having me on the show.
Amazing. I can't wait. Who doesn't want to go axe throwing? Shots fired. I love it. Well, I can't wait to hear more about that. But I always like to start a little bit with the journey. And you've had a series of key roles in rather unique businesses. So if you could take us back a little bit so we can understand what has shaped your leadership. How did, one position build onto the next and on to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really kind of starting in the agency world is where things began, especially from these sort of consumer services, customer services, trying to figure out what is the problem we're solving for. One lesson I learned that I've actually talked about a lot in the past 2 weeks is something that our agency owner would talk about all the time. And it was the idea of relationship building for the 3 deep, 3 wide, 3 high. And that's a key lesson I took away from the agency world that then led me to the client side and then on the franchisor side while being a franchisee. But really, that's one lesson I want to share because, again, It's been a conversation topic a lot. And I think it really leads to a lot of what I do now and how you build relationships and the things you want to solve for. And the idea of 3 deep is that you have your client, and on the agency side, everyone refers to their client, but who are the 3 people below your client that are supporting them, maybe in junior level roles. And it's important to have relationships with those people because as the client begins to hire more people and scale and promote within, some of those folks in the junior roles are going to be promoted to those positions where maybe they then become key decision makers. And so it's important to know the people that are producing the work for your client and knowing what your client needs and having good relationships with them so that they can best support you as an agency partner and presenting the work that you're doing to your actual client, because ultimately and usually they're the ones that are kind of preparing those documents and presentations for the client. The three wide is knowing the people at the same level of your client, maybe a senior director, maybe a VP, figuring out what other verticals or categories of the business they're in from that client business and seeing if you can solve any of the problems they might have as well. And the idea is getting your client to introduce you to the people that are three wide, so kind of at the same level as them. And I hate, the titles and roles and responsibilities, but again, it's finding the people three deep that are supporting the people that are at the level you're working with that have hired you, the three wide people at those same level, and then ultimately three high. Who are the people that your client is presenting to? What are their KPIs? What determines success for them? How do you best present work to your client so they can put themselves in a good position for presenting to their bosses or the board and ultimately saying, yes, this work was done by our agency partner. And so the three deep, three wide, three high really led to a lot of the sort of ways that I look at relationship building within the franchise system. So leaving the agency world, I went to the client side, and from the client side, working at a big tech firm, I was poached to become first the CMO and then CEO of a franchisor brand. From there, I exited and became the CMO and again the CEO at a franchisor brand. And from there, I was poached to become the CEO of a platform. I'd been part of exits to platforms for both franchisor brands. And this group, again, non-evil private equity, said, we think you would be perfect to help lead this. It's youth enrichment, it's family events, it's corporate. And yes, maybe axe throwing is good and fun, but this is something a little more tactile, a little more hands-on for key learnings that you can take back to home, show skills to your partner, to your kids, which I have definitely done. Just to plug the cooking skills for adults, if you don't know what a brunoise or a chiffonade or a Juliette or batonette cut is, you should come to a Young Chefs Academy and learn. But yes, corporate events, family, kids, and primarily we play in the kids space. So the opportunity to do something, especially as a father of four, that helps so many people spark joy and interest in cooking, it was a no-brainer for me to be able to come and join this platform. Again, knowing it's non-evil private equity and come and work on these brands. So long-winded answer, but that's how I made it here.
Love that so much. I want to reflect on the relationship piece.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation last night with someone who has pivoted their company. They're back visiting here in Playa. They used to live here, and we went for a walk and we were talking about this, and we're talking about how much relationships and in-person is almost like having a resurgence. And I think that it is vital for people to understand that these skills, in my perspective, are not being replaced. They are not going away. If anything, they're becoming more important the more technology, automation, AI that we have. And I think that is so, so vital. And I want to just take a moment. I love that. I've not heard three deep, three wide, three high. I think that I love something that can be broken down into a framework. But I think if anyone's listening, I'll give my reflection on a quick view of why that's so important. And if you have a different one, I'd love to hear it, because I don't want to assume that I know exactly what we're talking about. But when you're working with somebody who has a team that is actually doing a lot of the work that you're, supporting or directing, you cannot assume that they are translating well to their team in order for their team to produce what you need to deliver good work for them. And so I think in addition to relationship building and what you said, which is those people will eventually, if you think you're in it for the long term, which that's the best way to build relationships and work with clients, yes, those are probably your next clients. And for them to even be able to do work that enables you to do great work, don't assume that your client translates well. That's something I learned specifically in agency as well when we had our agency before we exited. The translation piece was really, really challenging. And we just had to start insisting that we have direct connection to the internal teams. The three wide, love that. If you are making your client look like a star, then
their colleagues also want to look like a star. So perfect opportunity. And I think it's like not being afraid to ask for those introductions. And the 3 high, again, I think of this almost as like when we talk about icebergs, which is like understanding what motivates people, understanding what's important to them, like what's below the surface. The 3 high is a little bit like that. Again, don't expect that that person can fully translate what matters, what even be self-aware enough to know like what really matters to them and what really matters to their bosses. And so the more that you can spread out and cultivate or harvest information, the better position you are to just be such a trusted advisor to them and really make them shine, which is the ultimate if you're in an agency type role or anything where you're really delivering for a client. You make them look good to their boss, like you're good.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it. I mean, I think the piece that boils down, especially in the agency world on the client side, the communication is, the message sent isn't always the message received. And that's the part, is making sure that you're all on the same page. And a framework that I use all the time, and this will save you a ton of debt from grad school, because I would say this is my biggest takeaway outside of, I went into debt to go to grad school, is the framework of STOP. And that's situation, target, opportunity, and proposal. And I bring this up because you brought up the communication and translation piece. And I think it's so important because I do find that, especially in the franchise business, where so many franchisors just believe, we're the experts, you need to listen to us. And franchisees will say the most common phrase, which is, you don't understand my market. And we often will have miscommunications, or even just internally, where there are things that people are just interpreting differently because, again, the message sent isn't always the message received. When that happens, the framework we use is STOP. And we literally say, hey, stop. No one's on the same page. And we write out the acronym and we say, let's agree on the S. What is the situation? What are we trying to solve for? And if we can agree on the S, we move on to the next letter and the next letter and the next letter. And ultimately we end up at the proposal. And as long as you can agree on the situation and agree on the target and agree on the opportunity, you then kind of have open field, free reign to go, what are the proposals that best solve for the situation, that meet the target, that produce something for the opportunity that we all agree on by going through this process, what proposal best fits. And I find that framework working incredibly well, not just from the agency world, but in the franchising space, especially because, that miscommunication, that lost translation piece that you touched on, it happens fairly regularly. And so if we can agree on the situation, we then can agree through the other steps to move forward in the best way possible.
I love that. And thank you for diving in there. I just was like, I want to break this down. Such a interesting concept. I love when we can break things down that people can take away. Usually we wait till the end to do that, but I was like, I can't miss this opportunity. And STOP. I love anything that's an acronym that's easy, that can be a little flow switch in your brain. I think that's fantastic. And always remembering, and this is in life and business, that we all float through with our own filter, with our own experiences. And so you can literally be side by side with somebody and they can be having a different experience or hearing a different message, is an ultimate hack. If you can always remind yourself of that and pause to think, what are the likely, permutations that are happening for each of us? Game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I mean, you touched on something that's so important, so valuable is, we have shared experiences, but all the things that sort of bring us to the table might be different. And the way that we interpret or perceive or even digest, to use the food analogy, those things, completely different for everyone. And also just even, what are people going through that day? How did they wake up that morning? What other things do they have after this interaction? It certainly can impact how we perceive, how we receive things, sort of what is our thought, emotion, or action that comes of that. And I think people forget that all the time because they just believe, we're coming from common ground. And that's where the STOP piece really comes into play, because you'll find that the situation might be different.
I think that's one of the most damaging fallacies, is assuming that somebody sees something the way you see it or understands what you understand or whatever, has whatever ingoing, inputs or context or anything.
I am living proof of that. I am a colorblind man that wears Coke bottle glasses. The amount of times that my wife or kids go, wow, look at that beautiful sunset. And I look up and go, I don't see what you're seeing. So I am living proof. I am an embodiment of that in physical form.
Amazing. That is, perfect example. I have a lot of colorblind friends. And it's always a good reminder when I'm like, oh, this or this, or I'll send like a screenshot with like colored things, and I have to remember for them, I'm like the plus and the circle, because I can't color code like indications for them. And I think that you can take that and you can just apply that to so many things. Learning to be direct and compassionate is a game changer in communication. Again, business and personal, so many similarities there.
Well, now you're getting into the nature versus nurture. The colorblindness isn't my fault,
No.
I blame it on the other chromosomes and
Absolutely.
other people. But yes, how you receive feedback, how you respond to that sort of stimulus, totally on the person. And that's where, again, I think the nature versus nurture impacts, who we are, what we do, how we reply. Yeah, I think there's a lot there.
Yeah. So I want to come back to your journey. Thank you for going on this tangent. You talked about kind of the succession of roles and what you learned through those. And I'm wondering, in terms of who you are today as a leader, how you see business, how you run teams, were there, vital inflection points, mistakes, mentors that really shaped your journey?
Absolutely on the mentor side, 1,000%. I mean, there's a number of people that I think I've interacted with, that I've learned from, that have helped guide me and really, been in my ear as far as sharing best practices, news, information to say, look, I've been through this before. Here's what I've seen. I'm not necessarily telling you what to do, but here's my recommendation. And sort of the framework for that is, here is the why, and the because of that is this. And we talk about that a lot with our franchisees, just in decision making. Tell me why you want to do something. Why do you want to sponsor this event? Because of that, what do you believe you will see? And the because should be a measurable metric, a dollar amount, a number, a percentage, some sort of thing that you can track. And so a lot of the advice that I've been given, not just, hey, think about these things in the context of why and because, but has been related to, this is why I'm making this recommendation. And because of that, this is what I think you will see.
That's such a valuable mentor moment to come through. And I think I know for me, like witnessing my mentors in action was almost as or more powerful than directly them maybe breaking down and telling me something. Being able to be, in the room with some of the partners when I was in strategy consulting and M&A, getting to see, how they handled things, how they told stories, how they managed the room, and then getting to like ask them later and understand that like, well, this is what I saw and this is what I know and this is what I, wanted to find out or achieve. So valuable.
Yeah, and I mean, so many people do things so differently. I was fortunate enough to attend our last corporate training for one of our brands. And the big takeaway was, you want to see people in the room and how they act. And kind of going back to what we sort of touched on as a deviation, the way people respond to people just on their physical size, physical appearance, changes a lot of things. When we're talking about Young Chefs Academy in particular and teaching kids how to cook, how kids respond to a male that is 6'3" and 260 pounds who happened to be a high school football coach approaching them to check in on what they were doing, their response to that was very different to a South Indian woman who was maybe 5'3", gently, quietly coming up to see, hey, let's see the work you've been doing. There's not one that's better or worse. It's just simply how people respond and knowing what you can do when you're literally in the room, like you touched on, to sort of create an advantage for who you are, how you act, how you behave, how you interact with people, especially when it comes to kids and learning and youth enrichment and making sure that they are doing the activity on hand.
So interesting. So, okay, you've amassed all of these, really valuable skills and insights and leadership qualities to extract those and help others. Why this business? Why now? Youth franchise brands. So, franchise in itself is a particular focus, and then to be focused on sort of youth enrichment activities is another niche level down.
Well, the youth enrichment is certainly the bigger draw. Being able to work on something that impacts children and families and adults, the ones again that aren't going to axe throwing, is obviously so valuable. We're creating the next generation of kids that are really going to care about what they cook. And ideally, through our programming with Flower Power and Young Chefs Academy, we're teaching them some of that entrepreneurship mindset in regards to budgeting, shopping, meal prep. We're teaching them health and wellness in regards to what do you eat? What's the sugar content? What's the caloric content? How can you better take care of yourself? How does what you eat impact your mood and your physical self, your future self? And then the STEAM and STEM-based learning of the science and math, whether it's reductions in sauces or the measuring of dry and wet goods and mixing them together, preheating, all of the things that we actually teach. For me to even be given the opportunity to work on something that touches on kids' lives and families' lives every day, again, no brainer to be able to join this, especially as someone that, again, has 4 children that I hope are inspired to learn how to navigate a residential kitchen or even a commercial kitchen and want to work and be around food. On the franchising side, being able to not necessarily standardize something, but to create opportunity that people can take advantage of as a small business owner when it comes to economies of scale, new vendors that we've introduced, savings, margins, things that we can bring to the table. Knowing that our group can come in and really provide a lot of good is a wonderful feeling for me. Because sometimes people buy franchises expecting a certain level of support that they then don't receive, or being experts in one thing that impacts their business but having no experience with another. And if we can do our job as the franchisor and really support the franchisees, they should just really focus on 3 things. The first being the experience, the second being their reputation in their market, and the third being their relationships in the market. If I can sort of, a phrase we use all the time, act as their aspirin and take all the other headaches of business ownership off their plate as much as possible, then we've done a good job in the franchisor-franchisee relationship. So to marry those 2 things of small business, individualized in markets that then get to expose children and families to the joys of cooking, again, working on youth franchise brands is a dream come true for me. It's sort of that social entrepreneurship adage of doing good while doing well.
I am so in love with everything you just said, and I want to go down 100 tangents because I think I have strong feelings about nutrition and wellness and,
Lead the way,
education
I'm
for
here
kids.
for it.
I'm on day 21 of my anti-inflammatory detox and cleanse, and so I'm like really in it to win it. But I want to understand a little bit more, about the companies. You've mentioned Young Chefs Academy and Flower Power Studios.
Yep.
And, one thing that I see a parallel with is there's some structure that is coming in that is maybe more typically seen in athletic endeavors. And you're bringing that into more creative space, which I think is really exciting to be able to have structure and progression and achievement acknowledgement in a more creative space that kind of mirrors what we already have experienced for generations in sports, which I'm a huge fan of. But
Yeah.
I really think that having that for kids who are maybe just not predisposed to want to pursue sports at a level beyond general wellness is phenomenal. So what do you see as, the future of children's activities, and how are these brands pioneering that?
Yeah, well, what do I see as far as the future of children's activities? The big topic is obviously AI, which you touched on earlier. I can't attribute the quote, but I saw it online where somebody said, I don't want AI to write and create art for me. What I want is AI to do the dishes for me and do the laundry so that I have more time to actually read and write and create art. But I think there will be a lot of growth in the AI space. I know that sounds like a silly statement. It's what's predicted by everybody. But I think the customization for the consumer is what intrigues me the most. I think they have the ability to create individualized lesson plans that really lean into the interests and sort of a Montessori model for kids and what they want to be able to explore and test and create, especially when it comes to ingredients and substitutes and how to make things more healthy or more protein enriched. I think that's where AI will really come into play, especially in the kitchen. As far as where we are related to kids in sports, we get a lot of parents that walk in, and I have done this myself, and they say, this is Trevor. He's our all-star baseball player, our all-star football player. This is Rebecca. She's our all-star volleyball player, swimmer. And this is their brother, Charlie. Charlie's our creative one, and we're looking for something for Charlie to do. And I have been at fault of that. Again, I have a Charlie. I want to find something that makes their heart flutter, where every day they wake up and go, I want to do something with that activity. I want to be involved in it in a bigger way. And that's where Young Chefs and Flower Power comes in, and sort of exposing those kids to the joy of cooking. Because ultimately what we are doing at the end of the day is teaching them confidence in the kitchen, but what we're really teaching and providing is self-esteem. We're letting them go home and say, look, mom, dad, look, brother, sister, look what I can do. And obviously we hope that they can take care of themselves later on in life, and potentially a partner later on in life if they choose to. And the way that Young Chefs has set that up with getting kids to be excited to come and be recognized is very similar to sports, like you mentioned. It's very much like a karate or taekwondo or jujitsu in the sense that you start off as a white chef jacket, and over your time of mastering skills, you earn your patches and stripes, and you eventually work your way towards a black chef jacket coat, just like you would starting off as a white belt and going through the journey of becoming a black belt. Obviously, this is a little different, but we do use knives, so maybe kids can defend themselves in the same way as a jujitsu. Obviously, I'm joking.
Safely.
But yeah, safely. But, I do love that part of where the kids understand their progression and they understand the work and the reward. They understand that if I do this and I practice it and I master it, I will be able to do this. And I will be able to show people that I can do this. And that's the part that's so amazing. To go a little deeper on that, we have a Sharp Chef knife certification. Again, not for self-defense purposes, but for really knowing how to use a knife in the kitchen. And on average, it takes kids 5 times to pass. And of course, being a parent and a business owner, I'm going, oh my God, are people getting frustrated? Are they quitting? Are they leaving because they're going, my kid isn't passing? What's going on here? And I realize it's just like a driver's license test. If somebody takes their driver's license test and they go out and they hit a parked car, we don't want to give them a license. You're talking about a knife, a sharp instrument, a tool that's used in the kitchen. And if you learn how to use it correctly and pass our certification, commonly on the 5th attempt, you will then be able to go and you will cook and create with confidence. And so there's those things where the work is put in and you are recognized and you graduate. And you then really are an expert when it comes to doing those things. And that's part of the program that I love the most, is that kids can really graduate with these certifications. Again, Sharp Chef Knife certification, Proteins level 1, 2, and 3, Science of Sauces and Reductions, Cake Topping and Piping, where they could go on and they really can hold their own in a prep commercial commissary kitchen or even a fine dining establishment.
Incredible. What have you experienced, if at all, around how this translates with the parents? Because I absolutely have witnessed throughout my life how much, my upbringing versus friends of mine has influenced our understanding, knowledge, and habits as regards to nutrition. And I'm thinking you are providing this, science-backed, structured way for kids to learn. But we all know that at home is one of the biggest influencers to children's development and beliefs and just general, I don't want to say success in life, but I'm going to say success in life for now.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. I mean, I think the thing I love hearing the most from parents is, how did you get them to try this thing? They never want to try that or eat that at home. And we obviously encourage kids to try anything that they created. But a lot of how that happens is the focus on the skills. We never give away the recipes for what we're making in our classes. We want it to be focused on the skill set. And we never want that mental block of, ugh, I'm making this thing. I hate that ingredient. I hate cucumbers. I hate Brussels sprouts. No, I don't want to make it. And you'll often get parents calling in saying, hey, it's between this activity or coming to class today. What are you making? And we really say we don't focus on the recipe. We focus on the skill set. We're working on knife skills. We're working on proteins level 1. We're working on these things. And we don't want you to know what's in there, because if you then say, wait a minute, you're making a chocolate zucchini brownie. We don't like zucchini. My kid hates zucchini. We'll skip class today. We never want that to happen. And so we love when kids come, we focus on the skills, and at the end of the lesson, they try a bite of something, and the parents then say, oh my God, how did you get them to try zucchini? How did you get them to try squash? How did you get them to try Brussels sprouts? At home, it never happens, but now they're excited to make this thing with this ingredient that they never would have for the family. A maple syrup covered Brussels sprout, oh my God, incredible. How did you get them to do this? Well, we focused on the skills. We then introduced the recipe.
Bacon.
Yeah, we added. That's how you get everybody to try anything. You just add bacon. But that's the part I love the most when it comes to the parents of going, oh my God, you got them to eat this thing. And then to your question of the health impact, yeah, of course, we want to be aware of a balanced diet, the nutrition, the impact that it has on mood and behavior, especially when you talk about sugar content, and having kids be aware of that early on and being able to make decisions about what they put in their body. You're talking about a lifetime of value and future health.
So powerful. I'd love to dig back into leadership a little bit, because I think, you've talked about agency, you've talked about being, inside product companies and franchises, and now being, leading a fund. A lot of different contexts, but I'm wondering, in terms of leadership styles, beliefs, myths, are there things you've had to unlearn along the way, or things that have surprised you around, what kind of works as a leader and what doesn't?
Yeah, I think it goes back to figuring out what is your North Star. What is your focus on, whether it's for the quarter, for the year, your ultimate exit or plan. We tell our franchisees to treat their business like an asset. We have some that want to aggressively invest and grow, and over a 3-year time period, sell, transfer it, transition out, give it to somebody with the promise of this is what it could become. And then we have some that we are very excited, have been part of the system for 20 years already, and are looking to renew their FA or franchise agreement to extend an additional 10 years. And so it really comes down to what is the North Star for you as the franchisor, or you as the franchisee, or you as the agency group or client, and figuring out ultimately an adage that I will take away from the agency world and the client side working in tech. Is it important because it's measured, or measured because it's important? I think there's such an emphasis on data, and so much that it sort of clouds or obfuscates what is our North Star, and ultimately what is the direction we want to head. Especially on the agency side, there's a lot of, oh, look, we lowered your cost per click. We did this for your cost per lead. We did this and lowered your CPM. Great. Is that important because it's measured, or measured because it's important? Ultimately, what is the North Star? Where are we heading? What direction do we want to go? And how does this data inform those decisions we're making?
I really like that. Lots of quotable moments. So I often talk about wealthy leadership, and really what that boils down to is success on your terms, right? Which I talk about wealthy leadership because I work with entrepreneurs, executives who want to grow companies. And I'm like, great. To your point, what's the North Star? Why are we doing this? Where are we trying to get in 5-10 years? Make sure that we have that guide rail. And then what about you? And so when I talk about wealthy leadership, it's the business you want that supports you and the life with whatever the pillars that are fundamental to you around health, connection, etc. And so that might be, I want enough time to build another business. That might be, I want to have time to travel with my kids. That might be a million other things, but it's really you taking the time to define that and then building for it. And I'd love to understand, again, you've been through quite a journey. What are trade-offs that you're no longer willing to make, or what, if you have it kind of readily available, what does success on your terms look like?
It's more of the trade-offs I'm willing to make now. I'm willing to ignore my family more for success, where I think most people would say the opposite. They want that work-life balance. I'm willing to put in more work to have less of the life. But I think that's more due to my 4 kids and the stages they're at, especially with the first 3 being boys, who all they seem to want to do is beat the hell out of each other. But, I was asked this
Self-sustaining little
recently.
ecosystem. It's great.
I was asked this recently of, do you think you're successful? And, I gave a sort of response without really thinking about it or defining the terms. And so, I want to use this opportunity to sort of reverse Uno back to you of, do you think you're successful, and how do you define success?
Oh gosh. I do think I'm successful because of my definition of success, which is that I am not primarily motivated by money. And so I know that I have walked away from multiple opportunities that would have put me in arguably better financial parameters. And I'm okay with that because I want to make sure that I do have enough to take care of myself and people I care about and share really incredible experiences. But what motivates me is really freedom of time, freedom of association, and freedom, flexibility, which I really believe comes from structure. Whole other podcast topic we could dive into on another call. I prioritize my health, and so my ability to live where I want helps with that, and my ability to structure my schedule really helps with that. I have people all over the world that I really care about, and I am able to go spend time with them where I want without really a major trade-off in terms of my profession. And I am very motivated by impact, and the work that I do makes an impact on every person I work with and ripples out from there, and it's very visible. So to your point about measurability, I get to see how the business grows and shifts and is, the metrics, often we're inputting metrics to my clients. I get to see how their teams change, and then I get to see how they as leaders and they as people grow. And they tell me because I structure feedback into what we do. And so when I look at it that way, that alongside the fact that I have set up my business to allow me to work in a way that pays my bills and, earns me what that level of financial that I aspire to, while having enough time to be around the people I want to be around, pursue experiences. I'm an experienced person. Work on my health very, very intentionally, and then still have flexibility to work on impact projects where I don't have to worry about how they compensate me. So working with accelerators, working with startups in certain areas that I believe are changing the world. I honestly can't think of anything better.
That's
and
awesome.
So to me, if I were to benchmark in different ways, if I were to look around at some of the people I spend time with and look at, their companies, or their bank accounts or their portfolios, I could feel a lot differently. But those aren't the things that are most important to me. I also walked away from companies that would put me in charge of bigger teams and bigger budgets and bigger annual revenues. And that isn't currently something that I desire. That's doesn't appeal to me. So I think that's why I talk about success on your terms and wealthy leadership, because it is so easy to check very societally acceptable boxes and feel confused or lost or unhappy. And I think we talk about it a lot. It's all over social media, self-actualization, but it is a motherfucker. And getting to that point and actually living it and reminding yourself and re-anchoring it is not for the faint of heart.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to use my, debt grad school term of thwarting hedonic adaptation and finding the things that bring you success. I think your answer is unbelievable, because you've built, the life and community and sense of purpose and ability to help others that I think so many people are chasing. And so, for me, the question of, are you successful? I'm reminded of a question that I was once asked that made me pause and go, whoa, I need to think about that, which is, what are you ultimately chasing? And I think it sounds like we're both ultimately chasing the life that we've created for ourselves. I think I can't speak for you, I need to stop and take a moment and go, this is everything you could have imagined. You're living in a place you love, you're eating food you crave, you have family, you have friends, you have community. you get to travel, you get to learn, you get to earn. What could be better? And yeah, I think you get into those societal pieces and expectations. And sometimes it becomes a number and it becomes financial. But I think ultimately, yeah, I would consider myself successful for the reasons you gave. Those are the things that I think also define success. And I think your answer was incredible.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that, you are feeling that as well. And I do want to caveat this with, and things can change over time. Like, I know the 3 options of how I would scale my business. And if and when I decide to pull one of those triggers, I will. But
wait, share one. What are 1 or 2, or I don't know if you want to give all 3,
Yeah.
but what's one you would do?
My goodness. Well, so right now my business is very much like a service-based business. And while I don't sell my time for money on that way, like I do, right? I'm an advisor. I spend time with my clients and they pay a certain amount of money for, having me as their advisor. So it is by its nature not scalable because I am one person who has a finite bandwidth. So the really easy ways would be, and I've done this in the past, like group programs are more scalable. You help more people, collect more money with, more sort of like volume people to your time. So that's an obvious one. But the actual like change of the business model would be things like plugging into larger associations and like servicing their customers. So I'm cutting off the need to be out selling individually, business to business or business B2C, but actually plugging in and allowing them to do that. And obviously there would be an exchange that works for them. Another option would be to bring in other advisors and really, train them on the structure that I work in. So that would, be a force multiplier. For what I do, it would be a very specific criteria because the amount of experiences I had is quite unique. And there's, only so many people that have that range of experiences. And I really would need them to like kind of become clones. I could also bring people in who are really deep specialists and offer, like change how I work where I do the higher level and then I send them off to work with other people. And then one of the things I would love to do, and I've thought about doing because I'm so passionate about health being part of wealth, is have more of a health partner and this is something I've really thought about over the years. And when I first started this business, I kind of wanted to do it. And then I was like, this is too complicated, and I had a good friend just straight up tell me that, which I really respected. He was like, do what you're good at. You're confusing me. He's a very successful entrepreneur, and health. He's a doctor and all these things before he's an entrepreneur. He was just like, if I'm confused, and I was like, yes. So I really started in strategy and operations and realized that the intangibles of leadership were something I was very good at and that were very needed. And all my clients get healthier, but having an actual clear offer or partnership in that space is definitely something I could see being a future avenue.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, specific client, specific offer or outcome. I think that's what defines all of us in who we are and what we do. I mean, that's sort of the elevator pitch for ourselves as business folks.
Yeah.
I work with these types of people, and this is what they will see working with me.
And I'm already doing more speaking. So, I don't really see that as like a change. It's more just a natural progression. But, looking at maybe guesting again into programs, retreats, other programs, and just giving my expertise without building an entire thing myself is definitely something I find very attractive and I think quite scalable.
I love that. We're going to have to check in. I don't know what you're doing. I'll need to find out what day it is. But let's say it's a Thursday, October 14th, 2026. We'll need to check in and see how you're progressing with this as your North Star.
Yeah. Well, right now, I'm just going to be putting out a new program in Q4. And I have a program I put out that I never advertised that's already been selling. So, I have the plans, as I should, God, taking my own Kool-Aid. I have the priorities and plans. But 2026, who knows? We're going to do that planning in about 6 weeks. And
okay.
I think big things. I'm getting a lot of interesting invites, so I'm excited.
I think big things for you as well. I have no doubts on that.
All right, so I want to come back. Thank you for the reverse Uno.
Yes, of course.
I'm sweating a little bit over here. Having a fund is a long-term play, and it is not for the faint of heart. I mean, entrepreneurship in general, but having a fund is not for the faint of heart. It is a long-term play. I'm wondering, like, what is most important to you these days, personally and professionally, and how does that kind of align with running a fund, growing a fund? You know, you mentioned you're pretty hands-on with your portfolio companies.
Yes, absolutely. I think it really just is dependent upon the type of fund that you have. There's obviously a big difference. And, we had talked before the call about when's the right time to bring on investors or to raise a round. And there's, obviously a huge difference between growth capital or acceleration, a hold co or a family office, private equity in the sense of, eventually they're going to want to squeeze the asset and flip it and you're managing things to a aggressive EBITDA each quarter. There's a lot of differences in those things. I'm fortunate that our fund is operating more of a family office holdco in the sense that we see certain trends that we believe are going to stand the test of time. Just like our conversation of AI, we think there will always be a need to do things with your hands. There is always going to be that tactile piece, especially when you talk about cognitive development in children, standardized lessons, the ability to move on to the next section once you've mastered a set of skills. Unfortunately, this is also cooking. This is food. This is health related, as we've talked about. And we see those as two trends that will stand the test of time. People are always going to want to do something with their hands, their bodies, their minds, and they're always going to want to eat. So as we play in this space as the beginning sort of vertical for youth franchise brands, we see this as something that isn't just a trend. It's not something that's going to disappear or something that we need to flip in 3 years to a larger group. This is something where we really can invest in it and be a part of it for the next few generations of our families. And I think that's something that motivated us as a group is we're all looking for something that we can pass on to our children or have a business in which they can learn and grow in as well. And again, that's sort of the difference of the mindset for some of our franchisees. Some, again, want to build this very quickly for their locations as a franchise academy or studio to then flip and sell and start the new thing. Some want to hold, like our New Jersey location, again, just celebrating 20 years, soon to hopefully be celebrating 30 with us as they extend their franchise agreement for another decade. How you approach what you want for your business and what that ultimately will provide, kind of going back to our conversation of success, is really what determines what you want to do and what your North Star is. And I'm very happy that our fund is operating in that sense of long-term investment. This is a play for us to grow AUV, average unit volume, so sales at our locations that are in the system, and to grow our footprint of our system across the country. We are talking to people that are interested in having locations. So if anyone listening is interested in having a Young Chefs Academy or Flower Power Studios, they should certainly reach out. Again, my name is Leigh Feldman. You can find me on any platform, again, with the colorblind Coke bottle glasses in my portfolio picture. But, they should reach out because we are definitely looking for people that are interested in sort of the marriage of the intersection of families, youth, corporate events, and food. And that's where we exist and play because, again, we think that is a space that will continue to grow, not just now, but for many decades in the future.
I love that. And I mean, I was thinking how much I agree with you in terms of the experience and the value. Even, gosh, it's got to be 15 years, maybe more. We used to do these offsites with our consulting. So I was in a boutique consulting firm. We would go to these like 2-day offsites, really working on, where the company's going and doing all the good things that I help my clients do
and
now.
axe throwing.
And well, no, guess what we did? We did a very specific group activity of cooking. And again, this is 15 years ago, but it was like the instructions were so specific and how you had to chop, whatever cuts you had to do of certain things and assemble. And we were in these groups of, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, and we were around, and it wasn't necessarily a competition. We're all very competitive people. So it absolutely turned into that. But it was, we had to cook and assemble a meal and then once, or a dish, and then once that was done, there was, normal appetizers and drinks, and then we had dinner and all the things. But I still remember that distinctly.
Of course.
It was such an incredible activity. It was so interesting and unique. I've been to cooking classes around the world. It's something I love doing when I travel because you get to go to like the real markets and get all the food. So I think, the memories that you build, let alone all of the wonderful skills that you've mentioned and knowledge and wellness is just incredible. So absolutely see where and why you're going there. So
And that is why we have kids that come in every week as part of our memberships to learn those skills. It touches on sort of those things on the, hedonic treadmill of novelty, variety, surprise, and skill. And, if you can learn, and again, using the food pun of digest, and then take that home, you're going to remember that as a core memory, like you just touched on of, oh, I remember doing this thing. Because again, it plays on all of those pieces. And that's what we love, that we get to introduce to kids, either one time for a workshop or for a camp, or every week for our memberships.
amazing. So I want to talk a little bit more about private capital and franchising, because I think often, and even if I was to look at my roster of guests, I got a lot of people in brand, in marketing, in media, in, development, product, IT, and various other things. But private capital, I feel like it's always been a bit nebulous. And, I remember thinking like venture capital, and when I started learning, and it just seemed like this big thing that was like really far away. And then now I have friends who are starting funds or who are joining funds or who are running funds. And I don't know, maybe that's just an age thing. But people are often very curious about venture capital, investment funds, how they work. And I think franchises is a business model that, we've all heard of it. We all know Subways,
Yep.
but really how they work. I would love to dig into that for anyone listening who is curious, maybe starting with the fund itself and sort of what the investment thesis is. I think you've shared it a lot, but summarizing that, and then, understanding if everything in your portfolio is a franchise or how you select your investments.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently everything in our portfolio is a franchise, but it's funny timing because we are looking at a brand that is not, that provides some things related to vocational activities. And so we're exploring some ways to set up. I think the nice part about our fund is sort of the flexibility in how we bring on partners for either capital or equity within sort of a larger portfolio. Again, I think it really just depends on what is the goal for the operations of the fund. If people are thinking about working with them, are they buying a minority stake? Are they buying a majority stake? Is there an earnout? Are they buying operational control? What is their plan with the team? As I was part of the first franchisor that I had joined, we split the franchise and corporate arms, and I'll talk about how those operate differently. And we sold one to a VC and one to a PE. And their ways for operating each side of the business were very different. I was very grateful that the founder chose the buyers that he selected, because he did have offers for more money for groups that said, look, we got a bunch of people with MBAs. They're going to come in and run this whole thing. We don't need your team. And we can manage it from afar. We'll manage it from Boston. We don't need you. And again, he chose the relationships of his team over the potential capital and earnout from this other group that presented an offer, because that was more of a caring concern for him. The money wasn't an issue. It was more about taking care of his people. And so I think that's a big part, is when you get into private equity especially, is figuring out what's the plan for the people. Are you going to reduce them? Are you going to replace them? Are you going to move them to other things? Is it a sort of shared services thesis and you're going to bring in other groups as a roll-up and half the people will be eliminated, or more than half? Are you going to need to sort of cut more than meat off the bone, really get into the bone itself, if this is a 3 to 5 year flip? And those are the things that I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes to taking on the investment. Again, giving up a part of their business, giving up part of the control of their business. I don't mean that just financially giving up a part, but giving up control of their business. What is the plan for their team and their people? What's the plan for them? And then ultimately, what is the plan for the brand? Some of the things that I was told when I first got into this space are, don't be afraid to pivot. What got you to here isn't necessarily what's going to get you to the next step. But congrats, you're here. You got across the finish line. But now we need to think about potentially pivoting and doing other things if we're talking about what is the next North Star. And some of that can include breadth and depth of services. Maybe some of the things that a founder or the owner of a company said, we'd never do that. That's not who we are. That's not our brand. Suddenly those things start to get introduced as private equity or VC capital says, look, we need to expand the breadth and depth. And then ultimately what I've learned is there's not really a lot of friends in this business. So I'm very fortunate to work with people that I consider friends and mentors and partners. Because when it comes to money, it's that sad reality of, hey, it's just business. And that is just the nature of the beast, especially when it comes to private equity in this space. As far as the franchisor-franchisee relationship, I think the thing that really makes us different is sort of twofold. We really believe that you need to have things that make sense in your market. And that's not really a franchisor MO. Their belief is, hey, the French fries in Duluth, Minnesota are going to be the same as Jakarta. Everything is built to spec. What works here works everywhere. And I think you really have to think about what makes sense in your market. There are things that are differences, whether it's household income, socioeconomic factors, cultural factors of when people might be shopping, when they might not for specific holidays, and then seasonality. I can't ask my owners in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to go do the same things in November, December that our owners in Mesa, Gilbert, Scottsdale, Phoenix might be doing, because they're going to go, it's -3 outside. It's 80 there. I can't do that. And the same is the opposite in the summer. If I asked our Mesa Gilbert owners to go outside and do events in the summer when it's 113 degrees, they're going to go, are you crazy? I wish it was Minneapolis right now where it's a perfect 83 or 78. It sounds nice. And I know you live in Playa Carmen. It's always perfect there, but you have to think about what makes sense in the market because seasonality does impact it. And then the other piece is, what is their timeline in our pipeline? Again, I mentioned a location that's been in business for 20 years. We have a location with a waiting list of 65 kids waiting for an opening. If I were to tell them, hey, we're doing a national campaign for client acquisition, they'd go, are you out of your mind? I don't need that. But that's very different for a location that's just opening their doors. And I think a franchisor needs to think about those things, especially when it becomes a relationship part of how do you work with your individual franchisees. You can't make these sort of all-encompassing decisions that play out for everyone without thinking about those two parts. What makes sense in their market, and ultimately, how does this impact their timeline in the pipeline and their business as a whole? Franchisors love to say, hey, we only do well if you do well, and that's true. That's how a franchise system is built. But I think there needs to be more recognition to those two things, and I think that's what makes us unique as a franchisor, is we'll always work with our franchisees to get their buy-in on any of those decisions we make, especially related to where they are in their market and what's their timeline in the pipeline of our system.
Amazing. So for you guys, are you very hands-on with your franchises, or are you more kind of like arm's length? Because there's all different ranges of, like you said, we're just going to put our management team in and run it, to, venture capital tends to be quite arm's length of like, you guys seem to have it, we're betting on your rapid growth.
We want to meet people where they want to be. And that could be a weekly call and meeting for check-ins. That could be a monthly operating review. It could be a quarterly thing, or it could be a, hey, leave me alone. I bought this business. I've got it. That's fine as long as they're doing well, but we want to make sure we're providing check-ins. Yeah, they bought a business. They bought an asset. How they choose to run it is sort of up to them. I'll use that loose language because they are part of a franchise system. Of course, you're not buying a Young Chef's Academy and then saying, I'm doing roofing services and gutter cleaning. Of course, how they operate it does depend on what we allow. But if they say, look, I'm going to run this business into the ground because I can and I want to, then that's fine. We just want to make sure they're aware of the support that we can provide and can meet them where they want to be. And for some of those folks, that means a weekly call. That means knowing that they can pick up their phone and call my phone or anyone on our team's phone at any time. That means us working on weekends. That means us working on nights because that's when our locations are open. And we're there to provide the support that they need if they need it. And again, there are many people in the system that say, I don't need to have a weekly call. Let me do what I do. I've got this. And that's great. As long as, again, we agree on the North Star, walk through the stop and say, what's the situation? What are we solving for? Here's what we propose. And then we're tracking that data and making sure, hey, is it important because it's measured or measured because it's important? And ultimately, this is why we want you to do that. And because of this, this is what you're going to see as a metric. And we agree on that number, percentage, or dollar outcome that we all want to see. And there are a lot of people engaged with our system that very much want to see their businesses win. And then there's some where this is a passion project and they're happy with the lifestyle in the sense of what hours they put in, the work that they do, and the money they do get as a return from it. But we'll work with them and meet them anywhere they want to be.
Amazing. So you're exposed to so many, founders, pitches, successful business leaders and teams across, your experiences and your current portfolio. And as you said, people who have different North Stars and or different versions of how to get to the North Star. I'm wondering, are there common threads amongst the most successful scaling franchises that you've observed?
Oof. Sadly, I think it's the parts of franchising that I don't love. I think they're maybe not as transparent. They're not as honest. They're selling people on a dream. They're not necessarily selling them on the support, the execution, and what is a day in the life of the owner. But I think there's a lot of franchise brands that become hot, if you will, and they gain momentum. And then consultants and salespeople are able to say, look, this brand is selling, grab a territory. There must be a reason that everyone else is buying it. And so when you see a lot of the things, as far as the pitch decks, it's a lot of what's called SNO, sold but not open. And the idea is, hey, we sold the licenses, we already got people in our system. Now it's your job to just operationally get them open. And what you lose out on is a lot of the capital that comes for the runway for the franchisor to put the right people in place to then support those owners with the things that they need to successfully pre-launch, go to market, continue to operate, have those check-ins over the first 18 months to 24 months, 2 years, and make sure that they're set up for success in their areas. And so I think a lot of what we see is sort of the pitch on, hey, you're buying a lottery ticket that's poised and primed to win if you can put in the additional money to support it. And sometimes those things are sold on a promise that I just don't know if can be delivered upon.
So thinking about the franchisees then, are there places that you think people most often go wrong or, the most common big roadblocks to achieving a successful franchise?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's undercapitalization. It's not enough money for the runway that they need. And it could be partially because they spent money on, I don't want to say the wrong things, but are things that are unnecessary at the time. Grand opening parties, unbelievable fixtures, all this extra stuff where you're going, let's invest in those things later on. It'd be like building a house and saying, I can't wait to put this amazing toilet in my master bedroom. That's fine if you have the funds to invest in that, but let's focus on the things that we know you need, like a front door. And I think there's sometimes mispurchasing, misuse of funds when it comes to franchisees, especially as they're starting out fresh in a market. I think the capitalization piece is certainly the biggest because ultimately the answer is you might be doing the right thing. You just might not be doing it for long enough. And that spark just needs to catch and people just run out of money before it does.
Is there something that you wish you knew when you started, scaling businesses that you know now that you would kind of reflect out to people who are in their journey?
For individuals, I think think of yourself like you're running for mayor. Where in your market do you want to campaign? Who do you want to endorse you? What outlets do you want to be in? What places do you want to visit so that you're in front of people? I think that's the part is that, especially as we talk about AI and this takeover, is a lot of folks, especially when they enter franchising, they want their old business style to be their new reality. They want to sit at a computer, they want to build PowerPoints, they want to send emails, they want to send texts and say, hey, I did my job, I did my work. Because that's what most jobs are. It's not the individual one-on-one conversation of, how do I get this person to be interested in who I am, what I do, and get them to come check it out? That sort of tease, that elevator pitch, those soft skills that I think a lot of people sometimes forget about. And so I think for the individual, I would remind people that think of this like you're running for mayor. Again, where do you want to campaign? Who do you want to endorse you? What outlets do you want to be in? Where do you want to be in the public front and center? On the other side, though, I think it's really investing in your team. Start every day with role play. Go through objection overcoming. Go through the sales side. Figure out what is your core offering. Every person that works for you should be able to answer the question of, hey, I heard you're working there. What's it like? What do you do? They should be able to have a short pitch answer of, oh, this is what I do. This is why we do it. Come check it out. and see who we are and what we do. Ultimately use the I statement of I work there. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure you're good. I can't wait to hear what you think once you come in. But I think those two parts of investing in the team and making sure that they are well equipped for representing your business is very valuable. And then making sure that you're sort of out in the community, building your reputation and building your relationships.
Amazing. So we have a tradition of a few rapid fire questions to finish things off. But before we do that, you've already mentioned it briefly, but I want to make sure if people are curious about Young Chefs Academy and Flower Power Studios or youth franchise brands, or they just want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to find you, and maybe who should be connecting with you? What's next for you guys as a fund that people should be looking to raise their hand up?
Well, we're always looking for brands. So if any brands or groups, especially franchisors, are interested in getting in touch, please reach out to me. Again, my name is Leigh Feldman, Leigh Feldman. If you're of a certain age, I say Feldman like Corey Feldman. If you're not of that age, you go, who is that? What are you talking about? We're always looking for franchisees, people that are entrepreneurs, people that love being around kids, families, people in their community, people that certainly love food and cooking. We teach people how to teach cooking. So you don't need to know how to cook. You don't need to know any of those things. We teach people how to do that. But certainly I would hope they reach out on LinkedIn, through this podcast, certainly to email for youth franchise brands, and certainly reach out to have a conversation.
Brilliant. We'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes so that it's really easy to get in contact with Leigh. And you ready for our rapid fire?
I am. I saved 2 reverse Uno cards, so maybe I'll play it here.
No. No. So it can be one word, a short phrase. You can pass if nothing comes to you. They're just a few fun questions for people to get to know you one last moment before we wrap up. So
perfect.
The first one, what's one decision that changed everything for you as a leader?
Having children.
What does strategy feel like when you're doing it well?
Flow state, or you're all rowing the boat in unison.
Is there a book, podcast, or person that really cracked something open for you?
Alex Snider, the host of the Builders podcast.
You're too kind. What's something you've said never again to in your business?
Well, I was going to say having more children.
Okay. 10 out of 10 answer. If you had a free weekend and 0 obligations, how would you spend it?
Wait, do I have children in this scenario?
You choose.
I would say relaxing with my family and trying to all get along.
Amazing. With 3 boys and then a 4th young girl, I can only imagine the chaos that comes with achieving that. Leigh, thank you so much for your time, for your insights and wisdom, and it has been such an enjoyable conversation.
Well, this was unbelievable. I can't thank you enough for having me. Again, I am jealous of where you get to be doing this. You have created the life that I would say absolutely could be described as successful. So thank you for having me on and being able to talk to a successful person.
Likewise, Leigh, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll do the next one in person here or maybe Mexico City if you end up, there for some reason. So
well, I'm setting the date, October 14th, 2026. I want to check in on your 3 levers.
Right. All right. I love it. We will do another episode for sure. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Builders, where we get real about what it actually takes to grow companies that perform without grinding you into the ground. If today's convo sparks something for you, here's what to do next. Follow the show, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone else who's building big. Don't let it be lonely at the top. If you're ready for more clarity, more leadership freedom, and less of a duct tape and go growth vibe, let's connect. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth. Walk away with a personalized fix-it list that gives you the clarity you've been craving on what to shift now to regain traction and build momentum. For more tools, insights, and my no-fluff takes on leadership and scaling strategically, join the Builders Club, also linked in the show notes. You can also head over to leaderswhobuild.com, where you'll find all the links to Peep My Creds, see client wins, or just confirm that yes, I went to the gym today. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building smart, and living success on your terms.